I opened the door to my Silver Dunes house, ready to take rental photos, and heard children running. My sister was in the kitchen. The locks were changed, new curtains hung, and a crib blocked the hall. "Wrong house," she said, stirring soup like she owned the place. She was wrong. My name is on the deed, and that day, I started a revenge plan no one in my family saw coming. My name is Rowan Blake. I am 31 years old, and I am the head of compliance for Hartmere Capital. My job is to find discrepancies, to follow the data until the ugly truth reveals itself. I am very good at my job, but I was not at work. I was standing in the foyer of my second home in Silver Dunes, a property I bought with my own bonus, and the air smelled wrong. It shouldn't have smelled like anything, maybe the faint, clean scent of the industrial cleaner my service uses once a month. Instead, it smelled of simmering tomatoes and, faintly, of baby powder. The key had been the first sign. My key, the one on my ring next to my apartment key and my office fob, slid into the lock but stopped, hitting a solid metallic wall, 2 millimeters too soon. It wouldn't turn. I had knocked, confused, and that's when I heard them. The thudding of small feet on the hardwood floors I'd paid to have refinished. I knocked again, harder, and the running stopped. Then, the sound of the deadbolt, a heavy, unfamiliar chunk, sliding back. The door opened, and there was my sister, Eliza. She was wearing leggings and an oversized college sweatshirt I didn't recognize. She was holding a wooden spoon dripping with red sauce. "Wrong house," she said, and began to close the door. I put my shoulder to it. "What are you doing, Eliza?" I pushed past her. The scene hit me like a physical blow. A playpen, a crib, was blocking the hallway. The curtains, my expensive linen ones, were gone, replaced by thick, gray blackout drapes, and on my antique mahogany dining table, tucked next to a stack of mail, was a crumpled white receipt from the local supermarket. I smoothed it out. Milk, diapers, organic applesauce, and a bottle of cheap Pinot Grigio. The name on the credit card slip. Eliza Calder. I looked up from the receipt, my gaze sweeping the room. My mind wasn't processing this as a sister. It was processing it as an audit, violation, unauthorized access, misappropriation of assets. "Rowan! Hi, Rowan!" 2 small boys, my nephews, ran into the room, sliding on the wood floor in their socks. They stopped when they saw my face. The older one, Leo, just stared. They called me Rowan, not Aunt Rowan, just Rowan. They had been here long enough for the formality, the familial tie, to be erased. They had been taught a new normal, one where I was just a name, not a relative. "What is this?" I kept my voice flat. It's a technique I use in depositions. Never show shock, never show anger, just ask the question. Eliza crossed her arms, the spoon still in her hand. "It's temporary. Ro, relax. We just needed a place to crash. You're never here anyway." "You changed my locks, Eliza." "The old one was sticking. I did you a favor." "A favor." I walked past her, toward the kitchen. The refrigerator, my stainless steel Sub-Zero, was unrecognizable. It was plastered, not just with crayon drawings, but with schedules, a laminated school calendar for the Silver Dunes Elementary District, a blue magnet holding a pediatrician's appointment card, and taped to the freezer door, a household chore chart, handwritten on lined paper, Leo, trash, Maya, feed fish, Mommy, everything else, with a smiley face. The paper was yellowed at the edges, the marker was faded. This wasn't temporary, this wasn't crashing, this was an occupation, this was colonization. My heart was hammering, but my mind was already cataloging. I needed my own data. I walked to the utility closet by the back door and opened it. The breaker box was there, and next to it, the small white box for the security system I'd installed. My system wasn't just alarms, it included 2 discrete cameras. One focused on the living room, one on the garage. The power light on the router was dark. The main power cord to the camera hub had been physically yanked from the wall. She had found it and unplugged it. I closed the closet door. my breathing shallow. She was sloppy. She thought unplugging it was enough. I went to the large, abstract painting in the hallway. I lifted it off its hook. Behind it was a small, gray rectangle, flush-mounted to the wall, the safe. I entered my code. My mother's birthday. A small, bitter irony, and it clicked open. Inside, next to the physical deed and a spare car key, was a small black Pelican case. I opened it, the backup SD card from the camera's local storage. She had cut the power, but the camera automatically saved the last 48 hours of footage before the disconnect to this internal backup. I had a timeline. I pocketed the card. "What are you doing? Snooping in your own house?" Eliza had followed me, her voice sharp with indignation. "I'm assessing the situation," I said. I needed air. I walked back to the front door, opened it, and stepped onto the porch. A woman I didn't recognize, walking a golden retriever, waved from the sidewalk. "Hi, landlord," she called out, cheerful. "Glad to see you checking on the place. Your sister is just the sweetest tenant." I froze. Tenant. The narrative was already set. Eliza hadn't just moved in. She had crafted a story for the neighborhood. I was the absent, wealthy owner, and she was the charming, struggling single mom renting the place. It was a brilliant, disgusting strategy. It immediately framed me as the villain if I ever tried to remove her. I nodded curtly to the neighbor and pulled out my phone. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I made 2 calls. The first was to my lawyer, leaving a curt voicemail. The second was to a 24-hour locksmith. "Yes, this is Rowan Blake. I'm at 44 Silver Dunes Drive. I require an emergency rekey of all external locks. I am the owner. I am on site." 20 minutes later, a white van labeled A1 Lock and Key pulled up. As the locksmith walked up the path with his metal case, Eliza's composure finally broke. "You can't do that," she shrieked from the doorway. The baby, Maya, now balanced on her hip. "I live here. We have rights." "You are not on the lease," I said, stepping aside for the locksmith. "There is no lease." "Exactly." As the locksmith began to drill out the first cylinder, Eliza pulled out her own phone. "You're throwing a single mother and 3 children onto the street. I'm calling the police. I'm telling them you're trespassing." She dialed 911. She used the script I knew she would. "My sister. She's trying to evict me illegally. She's scaring my children. I don't feel safe." 2 police cruisers arrived in under 10 minutes. The officers looked tired. They were used to this, the messy, awful domestic disputes of Silver Dunes. Eliza met them on the lawn, crying, holding the baby like a shield. "Officer, thank God. She just showed up. She hired this man. She's trying to make us homeless." She kept repeating the words, single mom, and squatter rights. She'd Googled it. She knew the terminology that made police wary. The taller officer turned to me. "Ma'am, what's your side of this?" I did not engage in the drama. I did not raise my voice. I did not mention the word sister. I simply presented the facts, just as I would to a board of directors. "Officer, my name is Rowan Blake. This is my property." I held up my phone. The screen showing the county assessor's page with my name. I handed him my driver's license. "I have the deed, the mortgage, and the insurance documentation. They are all exclusively in my name. Ms. Calder does not have a lease. She does not pay rent. She is here without my consent. She changed the locks, and I am having them restored to my control." I smiled, a calm, tight-lipped, professional smile, and then I remained silent. Eliza kept talking, her voice rising, but the officers were looking at my documents. They understood. This was a civil matter, not a criminal one. They couldn't remove her, but they certainly couldn't arrest me for changing the locks on a house I owned. "Ma'am," the officer said to Eliza, "this is a civil dispute. We can't prevent the owner from accessing her property." But the children!" "You'll have to take that up with the court," the officer said, handing back my license. He looked at me. "I'd recommend you both get lawyers." "I already have one," I said. They left. Eliza stood on the lawn, her face pale with fury. The locksmith finished the front door and moved to the back. He handed me a small ring with 4 new, shiny keys. The victory felt cold and metallic. I wouldn't stay. I couldn't. The stalemate was too toxic. But I wasn't finished. I walked back inside, past a fuming Eliza, and went to the kitchen. The whiteboard was still there. And at the bottom, under the faded chore chart, I saw it. A new entry, in fresh blue marker. Rent due next Friday. Beside it, there was a crude arrow pointing to a name. My name, Rowan. My blood went cold. This was not just squatting. This was a performance. She was manufacturing evidence of a tenancy agreement, creating a paper trail to claim she was paying me rent. This was fraud. This was the work of someone who believed they were smarter than the system. I raised my phone and took a clear, high-resolution photo of the whiteboard. The click of the camera shutter was the only sound in the house. I turned and walked out the front door, past the playpen, past the smell of her cooking in my kitchen. "You can't just leave," she yelled at my back. "Where am I supposed to go?" I didn't answer. I got into my car, the interior clean, sterile, and smelling only of leather. I drove for exactly 2 miles, then pulled onto the shoulder, the ocean churning grayly to my left. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with a cold, precise rage. I took out my work phone. I opened the encrypted note-taking app I use for my audits. I created a new file. This was no longer a family problem. She had invaded my property, changed my locks, and was manufacturing evidence to steal it from me. She had made this professional. I typed 1 line into the new file. Conflict check, Calder. The audit had begun. The keys felt cold in my hand, heavier than the old set. I sat in my car for a long time in the driveway, the locksmith's van shrinking in my rearview mirror. Eliza was still in my house, now a fortress I had new, useless keys to. I had won the battle over the locks, but she was still inside. She was still the master of the narrative. My mother, Catherine, always said Eliza had the kind heart, and I had the principles. This was her preferred narrative. It was the lens through in which all family history was viewed. In this story, Eliza was the warm, spontaneous, loving one, the one who felt things. I was the cold, calculating, rigid one, the one who did things. "You're brilliant, Rowan. We all know that," my mother would say, her voice laced with a soft, pitying sigh. "But you are too principled to be truly loved. You have to learn to bend." In our family, bending was a code word for breaking. It meant letting Eliza's chaos win. It meant I was the steel rebar, and she was the beautiful, destructive ivy. I was expected to hold the structure together while she was praised for the vibrant, choking greenery. I didn't bend. I went to Wharton on a full academic scholarship. I worked 2 jobs, one shelving dusty legal journals in the university library, the other bartending for entitled finance bros who would one day be my subordinates, to cover the books and food the scholarship didn't. I learned to read a balance sheet like a poem, to find the lies hidden in the numbers. I graduated summa cum laude, took the highest paying offer I got, and never asked my parents for $1. Eliza, 2 years younger, went to a state school for communications and dropped out after 3 semesters. The structure, she claimed, stifled her creative spirit. Her creative spirit led her to become a content creator, a nebulous term that, as far as I could tell, involved taking artfully distressed photos of lattes and posting affiliate links for skincare products she couldn't afford. And she borrowed, not asked, borrowed, a passive, entitled act of taking. It started small in college. "Ro, can you spot me for this textbook?" Then, "Ro, my phone's about to be shut off. Can I just use your card for this one bill?" It escalated. The year I got my first promotion, I discovered she had memorized my American Express card number and was using it for business expenses, a series of brunches, a new camera lens, and a wellness retreat she vlogged about. When I confronted her, she cried. When I canceled the card, She told our mother I was financially abusing her. My mother, in turn, told me I needed to understand the pressure Eliza was under. I was the first to be accused of lacking a kind heart. I bought the Silver Dunes house 3 years ago, with the first bonus that truly felt like mine. It wasn't an investment, it was an escape pod, a 2-bedroom bungalow on a quiet street, where I could go on weekends, turn off my compliance brain, and read novels. It was the physical manifestation of my success, built on the very principles my family despised. I was smart about it. I didn't buy it in my own name. I created the RB Coastal Sanctuary Trust and named myself as the sole trustee. It was a clean, legal firewall. I built a fortress to protect my asset from liability, from creditors, from the world. I just never imagined the enemy would come from inside my own bloodline, armed with a chore chart and a sob story. The current war started last year. Hartmere Capital had promoted me to head of compliance. It was a massive leap. The press release wasn't even an hour old when my phone lit up with her name. Rowan! Oh my God! Congrats! Head of compliance. I saw it on LinkedIn. I am so proud of you. Her voice was thick, sweet syrup. Listen, speaking of, things are just awful. Mike and I are done. Mike, father of child, number 2. It's a mess. I just need a place to breathe, to get the kids out of the city. Just for, 1 week. Can we please use the beach house? The kids would just be so happy. I said no. The line went silent for 3 full seconds. No? No, Eliza. It's not a guest house. It's not available. The syrup turned to acid. Wow. Okay. Not available. Got it. Another pause. You really are heartless, aren't you? Some sister. She hung up. 2 weeks later, it was my 31st birthday. My mother called to say they couldn't make the dinner I'd planned. Eliza was just too hurt by my coldness. But 4 months after that, when my first 6-figure executive bonus hit my account and I took my parents out to celebrate, Eliza was there. She showed up at the restaurant unannounced, wearing a new dress, smiling like she'd been invited all along. She'd hugged me, smelling of expensive perfume I'd never known her to wear. To my sister, she'd toasted, raising a glass of champagne I was paying for. She proves you really can have it all. She just assumed all included her. She assumed my boundaries were merely suggestions. Family helps family. That was the motto, the mantra, the get-out-of-jail-free card that justified every trespass, every theft, every emotional siphon. It was the moral shield our mother used to deflect any criticism of Eliza's behavior. But the rule only flowed one way. Family helps family meant Rowan pays the bill. It meant Rowan hosts the holiday. It meant Rowan gives, and Eliza takes. I was the family's chief financial officer. She was the family's chief emotional officer, a perpetual victim, a black hole of need. And now, driving back to my city apartment, the irony was crushing me. At Hartmere Capital, I am paid a salary high enough to buy a beach house specifically to find and neutralize conflicts of interest. I am the apex predator of the corporate world. I hunt for employees who use company P cards for personal dinners. I track procurement officers who give contracts to their cousins. I find the rot in the system. I expose it, and I cut it out. My job is, quite literally, to be too principled. At home, I was expected to be blind. I was supposed to see my sister, her 3 children, and her faded chore chart on my refrigerator, and call it family. I was supposed to see my locks changed and my property occupied, and bend. I was the conflict of interest. My phone, plugged into the console, buzzed with a notification. The conflict check Calder note I'd typed stared back at me, and suddenly, a different memory clicked into place, a cold, sharp detail. It was from 2 months ago, the last time I'd seen Eliza. She had dropped by my city apartment unannounced, right as I was getting home from work. She'd claimed she was in the neighborhood. It was a fishing expedition. I saw that now. She'd complained about her landlord, about the toxic mold in her apartment, all while her eyes scanned my home office, my life. She had tossed her bag, a new, trendy tote I hadn't seen before, onto my quartz countertop. Clipped to the strap, next to a pink puffball keychain, was a proximity card, a plain, slate-gray access card. No photo, just a stylized letter A. I didn't think anything of it at the time. But now, my compliance brain was running analytics. Gray, the letter A. Axiom Supply. My stomach hollowed out. Axiom Supply is a mid-level B2B vendor for Hartmere Capital. They supply all our off-site deployment hardware, encrypted hard drives, new inbox monitors, high-spec docking stations. They are a fully vetted partner. We spend approximately $3 million a year with Axiom. Their vendor access fobs for our building are slate gray. Why would Eliza Calder, a content creator, have an access card for a Hartmere hardware supplier? And then, the second piece hit me. Her new boyfriend, the one after Mike, the one she'd been raving about, Mark Doran. I'd only heard his name, never met him. He worked in procurement. He worked in my procurement department, at Hartmere. I gripped the steering wheel. The blood drained from my face. This wasn't just a domestic squabble. This wasn't a desperate sister needing shelter. This was calculated. This was a corporate conspiracy. The rent due note on the whiteboard, the tenant narrative to the neighbor. It wasn't just a flimsy attempt to build squatters' rights against me. It was a cover story. It was a pre-built narrative of a legitimate rental agreement. She didn't just pick my house because it was empty. She picked it because it was mine, the home of the head of compliance, the one place no one would ever think to look, the perfect blind spot. My house wasn't a home. It was an unauthorized warehouse, a black site for diverted corporate assets. My pretty, kind-hearted sister and her new procurement boyfriend were running an ugly ledger, and they were using my property, my name, my reputation, as the shell company to hide it. I smelled the rot, and it was coming from my own house. The drive back from Silver Dunes was a 2-hour crucible of compressed rage. The keys to my own house felt like foreign metal in my palm. The photo of the whiteboard, rent due. Next Friday. Rowan, burned on my phone screen. Eliza wasn't just a squatter. She was a performer, staging a flimsy, pathetic defense. And the gray Axiom access fob I'd seen on her bag weeks ago, that was the loose thread. I knew, with the cold certainty of a perfectly balanced ledger, that this wasn't just a family dispute. This was a leak, and my house was the bucket. On Monday morning, I walked into the Hartmere Capitol building at 7:00 a.m. The security guard at the marble desk nodded. "Morning, Ms. Blake." "Morning, Tom." I badged in. The elevator was silent, smelling of sanitized steel. I stepped out onto the 42nd floor. Compliance, my domain. The air here was different, filtered, controlled. It was the antithesis of the cloying, tomato and baby powder smell of my violated home. Here, there were no emotions. There was only data. I sat at my terminal, the triple monitor display lighting up my face, my personal feelings, the betrayal, the anger. I put them in a locked box. They were irrelevant. They were noise in the data. Rowan Blake, the sister, was gone. Ms. Blake, the head of compliance, was now at work. My first pull was from the procurement gateway. I ran a standard risk analysis, but with a specific filter, vendor ID 449A, Axiom Supply. I set the time frame, last 6 months. I ran a cross-reference against all shipping destinations. Usually, the report would be clean. 99% of Axiom's invoices shipped to our 5 corporate addresses: New York, London, Chicago, Hong Kong, Singapore. But my query was designed to find the 1%, the exceptions. 3 invoices popped up, flagged in yellow by my custom algorithm. Invoice 889T 150,000. Hardware 100 units. HP Z4 G5 workstations. Invoice 892A $210,000. Hardware 150 units. LG Ultrafine, 5K monitors. Invoice 901R, 90,000. Hardware, 300 units. Encrypted SSDs, 4 TB. Total value, $450,000. The shipping address on all three was not a Hartmere building. It was listed as Temporary Install Site, HMC Project Titan, located at 1140 Dune Parkway, Silver Dunes. My blood ran cold. 1140. Dune Parkway was not a Hartmere project site. It was a Silver Dunes storage facility, a U-Haul rental center. It was exactly 1.1 miles from my beach house. Why was Hartmere Capital shipping $500,000 in high-spec, easily fenced hardware to a self-storage unit in a sleepy beach town? The answer was in the next column. Internal approver. The digital signature on all three invoices, the man who had authorized the payment and the highly irregular shipping location, was M. Doran. Mark Doran, Deputy Procurement Manager, Eliza's ex-boyfriend, the one she'd dated for 2 years after college, the one she'd complained about but never seemed to fully disconnect from, the Axiom fob I'd seen on her bag. It wasn't his. It was hers. They weren't just exes. They were partners. The server data was the smoke. I needed the fire. I still had the backup SD card from my security system, resting in the zipped pocket of my briefcase. I waited until 5:30 p.m. When the floor was empty, I locked my office door. I did not use my network-connected computer. I pulled a standalone, air-gapped laptop from my personal safe, a device I used only for forensic analysis of sensitive files. I powered it on, booted from a secure USB, and slid the SD card into the slot. The card contained the last 48 hours of footage before Eliza had found the hub and ripped the power cord from the wall. The files were date-stamped 3 weeks prior. I clicked on a file marked the Garage Cam 02 1:17 a.m. The grainy, infrared footage flickered to life. The interior of my garage, my recycling bins, my folded beach chairs, and at 2:17 a.m., the electric garage door slid open. Headlights washed out the camera for a second. A white, unmarked panel van reversed up the driveway. A figure stepped out of the van's passenger side. The driver got out. Then, the side door of the garage, the one leading into my kitchen, opened. It was Eliza. She was wearing a bathrobe and slippers. Her hair was piled in a messy bun. She wasn't scared. She wasn't confused. She was directing traffic. She pointed. In the corner, behind the lawnmower. The two men from the van, both wearing dark hoodies, began unloading large brown cardboard boxes. They were heavy. The men grunted as they stacked them. The camera, positioned high in the corner, had a perfect, damning view of the labels on the boxes. Hartmere Capital, property of on-site install. Project Titan. Fragile. HP Z4G5. Workstation, 20 units. My sister, in my house, was actively receiving stolen company property in the middle of the night. She was the receiving agent. My house wasn't just a hideout. It was the drop point. I zoomed in. The camera's high resolution caught the master barcode on the side of the carton. A long string of numbers. A serial number. I saved a high-definition still of the barcode. I closed the laptop. My hands were perfectly steady. The anger was gone, replaced by a feeling I knew well. The hunt. I returned to my work terminal. I pulled up the second file associated with invoice 889T. It wasn't just the invoice. It was the warranty and asset tracking file that Axiom had submitted to Hartmere's system to verify the shipment. This file contained the individual serial numbers for every single one of the 100 workstations they had supposedly shipped to the storage unit. I opened the screenshot from my garage video. I typed the serial number from the box into my search bar. Match found. The serial number on the box in my garage, received by Eliza at 2:17 a.m., was the exact serial number Axiom had billed Hartmere for. The scheme was suddenly crystal clear. Step 1. M. Doran, using his procurement credentials, creates a ghost project. Project Titan, located in a storage unit in his ex-girlfriend's new town. Step 2. He orders $450,000 worth of untraceable, high-demand hardware from his contact at Axiom Supply, directing it to this temporary site. Step 3. Hartmere Capital pays the Axiom invoice in full, believing the assets are being staged for a company project. Step 4. Axiom, instead of delivering to the storage unit, delivers the assets in the dead of night to Eliza's new, secure off-the-books location. My house. The storage unit was just the paper trail. Step 5. The hardware, now officially in storage and paid for, vanishes from Hartmere's books. Doran, Eliza, and Axiom are free to sell the workstations and monitors on the gray market, splitting the pure profit. It was brilliant. It was clean. And they had used me. They had used the home of the head of compliance as the one place no one would ever suspect. The single mom act, the squatter's rights narrative, the fake rent due note. It was all a smokescreen. It was a pre-built defense, not against me as a sister, but against me as an auditor, in the impossibly slim chance I ever found out. This was not a simple theft. This was a conspiracy, and I knew it wasn't just one layer deep. Fraudsters are never satisfied. I opened a new window. This one was a portal to a third-party corporate and state tax database. If Axiom was willing to do this, they were double-dipping. I pulled the recent state tax filings for Axiom Supply. I found it in 20 minutes. Axiom had filed for a massive state tax credit for obsolete or R&D designated inventory. They were claiming a deduction on assets they couldn't sell, and the inventory list they submitted to the IRS to claim this credit? It included the serial numbers for 100 HP Z4 G5 workstations and 150 LG monitors. They had billed Hartmere for the assets, getting paid in full, and then they had told the government the same assets were worthless, taking a tax write-off. They were profiting on the sale and profiting on the tax break. It was beautiful. It was arrogant. And it was the nail in their coffin. This elevated the crime from simple theft to multi-state wire fraud and tax evasion. I sat back in my chair. The 42nd floor office was silent. The city lights glittered outside my window. I had everything. I opened Hartmere's encrypted internal case management system, a portal only I and the general counsel could access. I clicked New Case File. A small box appeared. Case name. I typed Silver Dunes. I began to upload my findings, my fingers flying across the keyboard, labeling each piece of evidence with cold, precise language. Exhibit A. Invoices 889, 892, 901. Approval M. Doran. Exhibit B. Shipping manifests 1140, Dune Parkway. Exhibit C. Video still, garage cam 02:10 a.m. Receipt of goods. Exhibit D. Serial number cross-reference, Hartmere warranty versus Exhibit C. Exhibit E. Axiom Supply State Tax Filing. Form 4562. Obsolete inventory. The last section of the intake form was Persons of Interest. I typed Internal. Mark Doran. Procurement. External. Axiom Supply. Vendor. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a single, fleeting second. I thought of my mother saying, "She has a kind heart." I thought of Eliza, shrieking on the lawn, holding her baby like a prop. I typed, External, Eliza Calder, civilian accomplice. This was my job. My sister was no longer my sister. She was a line item in my report. She was a subject. She was a co-conspirator in a $500,000 fraud scheme against my company, and I was the one who was going to burn them to the ground. The Silver Dunes case file was open on my monitor, a glowing blue rectangle on an otherwise dark screen. I had filed the initial report. Now, the system was waiting. I was waiting. The next move in this chess game was not mine. It was Eliza's. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text message. The notification preview showed her name. I let it sit for a full minute, a small, vibrating testament to her panic. Then I opened it. "Are you really going to do this?" Are you seriously going to throw 3 little kids out on the street? Your own blood? I can't believe you're this much of a monster. Rowan, what did we ever do to you? The classic Eliza maneuver, a salvo of emotional shrapnel, little kids, your own blood, monster. It was a script she had perfected, one our family had always folded to. She was appealing to a heart she had spent a lifetime telling me I didn't have. I read the text 3 times. I analyzed its structure. Play the victim. Invoke the children as human shields. Reframe my defense of my property as an unprovoked attack. End with a moral judgment. It was sloppy. It was desperate. It was, I noted with a flicker of professional interest, legally incriminating. It was a written admission that she was occupying the house against my will. I screenshotted the conversation and emailed it to my personal account, titling the email SD Exhibit F PDF. Then, I replied, I typed the message, deleted it, and retyped it to be void of all emotion. I was not a sister. I was a legal entity responding to an unauthorized tenant. Eliza, the children are my primary concern. I am not putting them on the street. I am having them safely relocated to an extended stay hotel suite, paid for by me, for 2 weeks. A state-licensed child advocate and my attorney will be present during the transition to ensure their comfort and well-being. I hit send. The delivered receipt appeared instantly. The child advocate was the key. It was a surgical strike. It told her I was not only neutralizing her mother card, I was escalating the situation to a legal standard she could not meet. I was introducing an objective third party who would witness her behavior, her children's state, and the illegal conditions. It told her I was prepared to go to family court. Her response was a string of incoherent, furious typos. A child advocate? You're trying to take my kids? You psycho. You're trying to take my kids. I'm ensuring they are properly cared for while their mother is evicted from an illegal occupation. Do not contact me directly again. All communication must go through my lawyer. I blocked her number. The second wave came exactly 30 minutes later, as I knew it would. My phone rang. The caller ID was Catherine Blake, my mother. I let it ring 3 times, took a sip of water, and answered, putting it on speakerphone. Hello? Mother? Rowan, what are you doing to your sister? Her voice was not yelling. It was worse. It was heavy, weighted with that signature, manufactured disappointment that had been her primary tool of control my entire life. It was the, you're too principled to be loved voice. I am securing my property and my company's assets, Mother. This isn't about assets, she snapped, the facade cracking for a second. This is about family. You are embarrassing us. You are turning a family matter into this legal mess. You called the police on her. You're hiring lawyers. What is wrong with you? She's your sister. She has nowhere else to go. That is factually incorrect. She has a registered apartment in the city, the one she's apparently abandoned. This has nothing to do with nowhere to go, and everything to do with a $500,000 fraud scheme she is running with Mark Doran. Silence. A long, hissing pause. I had just presented an exhibit. I had escalated the facts beyond her emotional script. What? She stammered. Rowan, don't be ridiculous. Eliza wouldn't. She doesn't even know what that is. She's not like you. She's a good person. Mark is a good man. Mother, I have video evidence of her receiving stolen hardware, purchased by Hartmere, in my garage at 2 a.m. I have the shipping manifests. I have the fraudulent invoices approved by Doran. I have their tax filings. They are criminals. I heard her take a sharp, shaky breath. She was processing, not the crime, but the consequences, the embarrassment. Rowan, she said, her voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial whisper. You need to stop this. You work in that compliance world. You can make this go away. You can bury it. For the family. Think of the children. Think of Eliza. This would destroy her. It's your job to handle these things quietly. I had been waiting for that. The assumption that my power, my principles, my entire career were just tools to be used in service of the family's bending, that I would become a criminal myself to protect the person who had made me her victim. "You're right, Mother," I said, my voice as calm and flat as a steel plate. "It is my job to handle this, so you have a choice to make, and you have 60 seconds. "A choice? What are you talking about?" "You can either be the grandmother who convinces her daughter to walk out of that house, with her children, and surrender the stolen property by noon tomorrow, or you can be the mother who visits her daughter in a federal correctional facility. I have a report sitting on my desktop. I can either send it to Hartmere's Internal Audit Committee, or I can send it to the district attorney and the FBI. You tell me which one is better for the family's reputation." I said nothing else. The speakerphone filled the room with her staggered, furious breathing. You would do that?" she whispered. "You would send your own sister to prison?" "I will protect my company. I will protect my name. This is not a negotiation. The clock is ticking." She hung up on me. That night, the third wave arrived. This one was not emotional. It was primitive. I was in my city apartment, 42 floors above the street. I was reviewing the utility bills for the Silver Dunes house, which I just received via email. I heard nothing. I just saw it. A sudden piercing beam of light shot through my window, hitting the far wall of my living room. I stood up, my heart lurching. I walked to the window. Down on the street, parked directly across from my building in a no-standing zone, was a black Dodge Charger. It was an obnoxious, aggressive car. It was illegally parked, its engine idling, and its high-beam headlights were aimed directly precisely at my apartment window, a beacon of intimidation. I didn't need to guess who it was. Mark Doran? He wasn't getting out. He wasn't honking. He was just watching. It was a message. "I know where you live. I am here. I am not afraid." It was a pathetic, small man attempt to mark territory, to rattle the head of compliance he had been defrauding. I looked down at the car. Then I looked at the man in the driver's seat, a silhouette against the glare. I did not close my curtains. I did not hide. I picked up my phone. I opened the camera and set it to 10x zoom. The lens was good. I got a perfectly clear, high-resolution shot of the car. I got the license plate, J44LXR. I went back to my desk, opened the Silver Dunes case file, and created SD Exhibit G PDF. I attached the photo. I ran the plate through a private database I have a subscription to. The car was leased. Not to Doran. It was leased to a shell company, Axiom Logistics LLC, a subsidiary of Axiom Supply. He was intimidating me using a car paid for by the company he was in a conspiracy with. He was a fool. I added the lease agreement to the file. He wasn't just threatening me. He was handing me more evidence. He stayed there for 20 minutes, his lights burning into my wall. I never looked away from my computer. When he finally sped off, tires squealing, I was already done. The final attack of the week was, predictably, Eliza's. The phone calls from my mother had failed. The intimidation from her partner had failed. So she went public. A friend from college, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, sent me a link. It was a GoFundMe page. The title was, "Help a Single Mom and 3 Kids Betrayed by Family." The photo was a selfie of Eliza, tears in her eyes, holding baby Maya. Leo and the other boy were visible in the background, looking confused. And then, the text. It was a masterpiece of pathological fiction. "My name is Eliza, and I'm a single mom just trying to survive." The post began. 6 months ago, my abusive ex forced me and my 3 beautiful children to flee. My sister, a wealthy executive, offered us her unused beach house as a safe harbor. We've been trying to rebuild our lives, and the kids were finally happy. But last week, she changed her mind. She showed up with police, trying to throw us on the street with no warning. All so she can rent the house for money. She's heartless. She has served me with eviction papers and is trying to declare me an unfit mother. All because I can't pay her the rent she suddenly demanded. I'm just a mom trying to protect my babies. Please, if you can spare anything, help me fight this corporate monster who also happens to be my own sister. She had tagged 3 local domestic violence shelters and 2 Moms for Moms community groups. It was brilliant. It was defamation. And it was public. She was trying to weaponize the community against me. She was trying to get me fired. My hands didn't shake. I didn't call my lawyer to yell. I simply instructed him to send 2 things. First, a formal cease and desist letter to Eliza, citing defamation, libel, and fraudulent representation. It was sent via certified mail and email. Second, a formal notification to the GoFundMe legal department, demonstrating that the fundraiser was based on fraudulent claims. I attached the certified deed of trust, proving my sole ownership. I attached the police report from the locksmith incident, where the police had sided with me. I attached a copy of her current active lease for her city apartment, proving she was not forced to flee. The platform's legal team responded in 4 hours. By 8 p.m., the page was taken down for violation of terms of service. I sat back. The soft threats were over. The emotional blackmail, the family pressure, the physical intimidation, the public smearing, they had all been tried, and they had all been logged, filed, and dismantled. I turned back to the utility bills, the Silver Dunes electric bill. I pulled the usage charts for the last 12 months. From May to June, the usage was flat, $30 a month, the air conditioning on low, the refrigerator humming. In July, the month Eliza and Doran's invoices began, the bill had exploded. It was now $450 a month. It was the garage. It had to be. All that hardware, the workstations, the monitors, they weren't just sitting there. They were running. Why? Were they mining cryptocurrency? Were they running a bot farm? The stolen hardware wasn't just being stored, it was being used. The theft was active, and my garage was the hub. I looked at the bill in my hand. The account was in my name. The automatic payments came from my checking account. I opened the Silver Dunes case file one last time for the night. I went to the executive summary, a small box where I could add analytical notes. I typed a single question. Query: who paid the electrical utilities to power this $500,000 illegal warehouse and active fraud operation from July to October? I hit enter and typed the answer myself. Answer: I did. The soft threats had failed. My mother's emotional blackmail, Doran's pathetic headlight intimidation, Eliza's defamatory GoFundMe. They were nothing but noise. Amateurish attempts to disrupt an audit they didn't even know was happening. They thought they were fighting me. The sister. They had no idea they were now fighting me. The head of compliance. The Silver Dunes file on my secure drive was no longer just an investigation. It was an operational plan. The countdown to execution began on Friday afternoon. My first move was internal. I didn't email. I walked down to the 41st floor, to the office of Greg Salter, the chief internal auditor. He was a pit bull in a Brooks Brothers suit, a man who loved finding rot more than I did. Greg, I said, standing in his doorway. He looked up over his glasses. Rowan, what's on fire? Procurement, I said. Vendor 449A, Axiom Supply. I've got flags for $500,000 in hardware diverted to an off-site, unverified storage location. Approval authority is Doran. I think it's a ghost project. Greg's eyes lit up. This was his bread and butter. I need a full, unannounced field audit, I continued. Boots on the ground. I want Doran and his entire team in a conference room with you, and I want a separate team seizing all manifests and POs. I need it to happen first thing Monday, 9 a.m. You want to kick the hornet's nest? He grinned. I want to see who gets stung, I replied. Monday, 9 a.m., he said. They won't know what hit them. Trap 1 was set. Doran would be pinned down, his access frozen, his attention diverted, completely unable to help Eliza. Trap 2 was for my sister. I returned to my office and called the highest-rated real estate agency in Silver Dunes. Hi, my name is Rowan Blake, I said, my voice light and professional. I own 44 Silver Dunes Drive. I'm finally ready to put it on the rental market. I need a full photo and video shoot for the listing. Coming soon package. Can you have your best agent there on Monday morning? Say 9 a.m.? The booking agent was thrilled. Absolutely. Ms. Blake, we'll have Sarah there right at 9. Will your current tenants be out? I'm handling that part, I said. The house will be vacant for your agent. Just ensure she captures everything. The second trigger was set. A public, legitimate, commercial activity that would coincide perfectly with the audit. The third step was the most delicate. The children. I would not, as Eliza claimed, throw them on the street. My move had to be surgical, compassionate, and legally unimpeachable. My lawyer, Mr. Vinson, was already on it. He spent Friday afternoon coordinating with a local nonprofit, the Westvale Family Services Center. This was not a call to Child Protective Services. I was not alleging abuse. I was, instead, preemptively providing resources. Ms. Blake has secured a 2-bedroom, extended stay suite at the Residence Inn in Westvale for 2 full weeks, all expenses paid. Vincent explained to the center's director, "We are requesting that a licensed family advocate be present on site at 44 Silver Dunes Drive on Monday morning to help Ms. Calder and her 3 children with the transition. This is a non-confrontational welfare check and relocation assistance." I transferred the funds for the hotel, plus a $2,000 gift card to the local Stop and Shop. This wasn't kindness. It was a legal firewall. It was Exhibit A in any future custody hearing, proving I had acted in the children's best interest. When Eliza screamed to the police that I was making her children homeless, a state-licensed advocate would be standing right there, holding the keys to their new, clean hotel room and a grocery card. Her narrative would evaporate on the spot. Fourth, Vincent filed the emergency motion. He'd been working on it all week. It was an ex parte petition for an immediate order to vacate, and, crucially, a temporary restraining order to preserve assets. It named Eliza Calder as the defendant and Hartmere Capital as an interested third party. The petition explicitly stated that we had evidence to believe corporate assets were being illegally stored on the property. This motion, when signed by a judge Monday morning, would give the police officers who served it the authority to enter, seize, and secure any property matching the description in my Silver Dunes file. Fifth, I needed new eyes. The internal cameras were dead. The garage, however, was visible from the public street. On Saturday morning, I drove my own car to Silver Dunes. I didn't park on my street. I parked 3 blocks away and walked, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. I went to the house across the street from mine, the one with the large, mature oak tree in the front yard. A retiree named Mr. Henderson answered the door. "Mr. Henderson? Hi, I'm Rowan Blake, your neighbor from 44, the owner." He squinted. "Thought your sister was the owner. She's got a lot of traffic, all hours." "That's actually why I'm here, sir. I'm having a significant issue with her as an unauthorized tenant. She's subletting the garage. I'm trying to document it for the police." I held up a small, weatherproof 4K camera. "I was wondering if I could have your permission to mount this on your oak tree. It's motion activated and aims only at my garage and driveway. It won't capture any part of your property, I promise." Henderson, who clearly hated the late-night van deliveries as much as I did, nodded grimly. "Help yourself, young lady. That whole setup over there, it's not right." 30 minutes later, the camera was installed, perfectly concealed by leaves, feeding a high-definition, cloud-based stream directly to my phone. It was perfectly legal. It was filming my own property from a consenting neighbor's, capturing the public driveway and the garage door. The trap was now baited. Sixth, the digital tripwire. Back in my city apartment, I logged into the compliance backend of Hartmere's procurement system. It took me 90 seconds. I flagged Doran's user ID and vendor 449A, Axiom. I set a silent, high-priority alert. If Doran approved any new purchase order, if he tried to create a new ghost project to move the hardware, or if he even queried the system for Project Titan, I would get an instant, encrypted push notification. His digital movements were now tethered to my phone. Seventh, and my personal favorite, was the psychological prod. At 4 p.m. on Friday, I sent my regularly scheduled quarterly compliance and ethics reminder email to the entire 5,000-employee global distribution list. This was a normal, boring part of my job. But this quarter, I tailored it. Subject: Urgent Policy. Reminder: Familial Conflicts of Interest and Vendor Management. The email was a dry 3-paragraph recitation of company policy. As a reminder, Hartmere policy explicitly forbids any employee from engaging in a professional vendor relationship with any entity that employs or is financially tied to a family member, defined as, but not limited to, a spouse, partner, sibling, parent, or cousin, without prior written disclosure to and approval from the compliance department. Failure to disclose such a conflict constitutes a Level 1 violation and is grounds for immediate termination. Furthermore, the utilization of any company asset or property for personal use or for the financial benefit of a non-employee family member is considered theft and will be referred to law enforcement. I didn't name him. I didn't have to. I hit send and pictured Doran, sitting in his cubicle in procurement, seeing that subject line pop up in his inbox. I pictured his blood turning to ice. I pictured him reading the words sibling, theft, and law enforcement. Panicked people make mistakes. I just needed to push him. The push worked. The combination of the GoFundMe page being taken down, the formal cease and desist from my lawyer, and I was certain a hysterical phone call from Doran about my ethics email sent Eliza into a spiral. She couldn't use GoFundMe, so she went to Instagram. That night, she posted a 10-minute, tear-soaked video. It was a masterwork of her craft. She filmed it in her car, parked in the dark, to look like she was nomadic, homeless. I can't even believe I'm making this, she wept into her phone camera. My own sister, a vicious corporate executive, is using all her power to silence me. She had my donation page taken down. She's sending lawyers after me. She is trying to take my children. She never used my name. She was learning. I'm just a mom, she sobbed, trying to protect my babies from a monster who has all the money and all the power. They are trying to scare me, to shut me up. Please, I can't fight her alone. They shut down the fund, but they can't shut us all down. My Venmo is at Eliza Caldersip. Please, help me fight back. I watched the video twice. I felt nothing except a cold, sharp anticipation. Her Venmo feed was public. I opened it on my laptop. The donations started to trickle in. $20 from Jenna Bakes, $50 from Moms Support Moms. I kept the feed open, refreshing it every few minutes. I went to my kitchen, made tea, and came back. And there it was. At 9:15 p.m., a new donation appeared. Axiom Logistics, LLC, paid Eliza Calder, SIP $5,000. The note: Stay strong. We support you. I froze. I stared at the screen. He had done it. Doran, in a blind panic, had funneled money to Eliza, and he was so stupid, so arrogant, that he did it from the corporate shell account. The same Axiom Logistics LLC that leased his Black Dodge Charger. He had just created a direct, public, time-stamped wire transfer from the conspiracy's bank account to his co-conspirator, triggered by her public plea for help in fighting me. It was a confession. It was a receipt for the entire conspiracy. I took a full-page, high-resolution screenshot. I saved it as SD Exhibit OH, PDF, and uploaded it to the case file. I leaned back in my chair. All the pieces were in place. The auditors, the real estate agent, the family advocate, the police order, the camera, the digital tripwire, and now, the public confession. Monday was going to be a very, very busy day. My mother always said I was too principled to be loved, but in my world, principles are the steel teeth of the trap. And I smiled, because public is always where the guilty confess. They can't help themselves. They scream their guilt into the void, thinking it's a microphone, when it's really a recorder. Monday, 9:00 a.m. The city was 2 hours away, but I could feel the gears turning. At this exact moment, Greg Salter, the internal auditor, would be walking into the 41st floor conference room, freezing Doran's accounts, and impounding his computer. Here, in the bright coastal sunshine of Silver Dunes, the second half of the trap was springing. I sat in my car, parked 3 streets down, watching the live feed from the camera in Mr. Henderson's oak tree. My phone was a command center. 8:51 a.m. Sarah, the realtor, arrived in a cheerful red Mini Cooper. She was bubbly, precisely on time, and immediately began filming B-roll of the street with her phone on a gimbal. 8:55 a.m. A blue sedan parked behind me. My lawyer, Mr. Vincent, and Julia Petrova, the advocate from Westvale Family Services, stepped out. They knew the plan. They would not approach the house until I did. 8:58 a.m. 2 Silver Dunes police cruisers rolled silently to the end of the block and parked. Lights off. Vincent had briefed the sergeant. They were here to serve a civil order and prevent the removal of assets. 9:01 a.m. The target arrived. A white panel van, identical to the one from my security footage, turned onto the street. It did not park on the curb. It pulled directly into my driveway, its tires crushing a patch of overgrown grass. The arrogance was breathtaking. Doran, trapped in his audit, must have pushed this supplemental delivery through in a final, panicked act of execution before his credentials were frozen. The driver got out, clipboard in hand, and knocked on my front door. I watched Sarah, the realtor, walking back up the sidewalk. She was filming her virtual tour introduction. "And here we are at 44 Silver Dunes," she narrated to her phone. "A charming bungalow on a quiet, family-friendly street. Oh, looks like we have a delivery happening. We'll just wait for them to finish." She kept filming. From her position on the public sidewalk, she had a perfect, unobstructed view of the Axiom van, the house, and the driveway. That was my cue. I started my car, turned the corner, and parked directly behind the Axiom van, blocking its exit. Vincent, Petrova, and the 2 officers converged on foot. A sudden, quiet flash mob of legal authority. The front door opened. Eliza, holding a coffee mug, stepped out. Her eyes widened when she saw the van. She smiled, clearly expecting the delivery. Then she saw me. The smile vanished. Then she saw Vincent, Petrova, and the 2 uniformed officers. The coffee mug slipped from her hand and shattered on the walkway. "Rowan? What is this?" "Good morning, Eliza." I turned my attention to the driver, who was frozen, hand on the van's roll door. "Sir," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet morning air, "my name is Rowan Blake. I am the owner of this property." Vincent stepped forward, holding the court order. "Sir, I am serving you with a judicial restraining order to preserve all assets at this location, pending an investigation by Hartmere Capital. You are not authorized to unload or remove any items. You are on private property." The driver looked from the paper to me, to Eliza, to the cops. He was cornered. He did exactly what his pay grade dictated. He pulled out his phone. "I gotta call my boss," he stammered. "Please do," I said, "and I advise you to put it on speakerphone, so the officers can hear his instructions." He fumbled with the phone, his thumb shaking. He dialed. It rang twice. A voice answered, not with a hello, but with a thin, panicked hiss. "Are you there? Is it done?" It was Doran. He was in the conference room. I could hear the faint, muffled sound of Greg Salter's voice in the background. "Boss, I'm at the house," the driver said, his voice cracking. "But there's people here, the owner, and cops, and a lawyer. They gave me a paper." There was a long, static-filled pause. I could visualize Doran, his face gray, surrounded by auditors, his entire scheme collapsing in real time. Then, his voice came back, a desperate, stupid whisper. "I don't care what they said. Get the boxes in the garage. Put it inside like last time. Just get it off the truck and go. Now." I nodded at Officer Riley, the senior cop. He'd heard it all. "Sir," Riley said, stepping toward the driver, You have just been recorded receiving an instruction to violate a court order. You are now party to this. Step away from the vehicle, hands on your head." The driver dropped the phone and put his hands up. "I'm just doing my job. I don't know anything." "We'll sort that out downtown," Riley's partner said, cuffing him. "You can't do this," Eliza suddenly shrieked. The paralysis was gone, replaced by her default setting, manufactured rage. She ran back inside and reappeared a second later. But she wasn't alone. She had scooped up Maya, the baby, and was holding her against her chest like a flak jacket. "You are trespassing," she screamed at the officers, the baby starting to cry. "You are terrorizing my children. This is a private residence. You have no right to my privacy." She was performing, but her audience was wrong. Ms. Petrova, the advocate, stepped forward, her voice a calm, gentle counterpoint to Eliza's hysteria. "Ms. Calder? My name is Julia Petrova. I'm with Westvale Family Services." Eliza stopped mid-shout. This was not in her script. "We're not here to terrorize anyone, Eliza," Julia continued, her focus entirely on the children, who were now peeking out the door. "We're here to help. Ms. Blake has arranged a beautiful 2-bedroom suite for you and the children at the Residence Inn, paid for 2 weeks, along with a $2,000 grocery card. To help you transition, my only job is to make sure the kids feel safe while the officers do their work." Eliza's face was a mask of stunned confusion. The single mom on the street narrative had just been surgically neutralized. "While you two talk," Officer Riley said, "my partner and I will be inspecting the vehicle and the garage, as authorized by the order." He opened the back of the van. It was just as I expected, stacked to the roof with Hartmere-labeled workstations and monitors. "Ms. Blake," he called out, "you mentioned matching invoices?" I unlocked my phone, opened the Silver Dunes case file, and handed it to him. He looked at the serial number on the top box, then at the manifest on my screen. "Match," he said. He looked at the next box. "Match." He looked at his partner. "The garage." They went to the garage side door. It was locked. "Ms. Calder, we need access," Riley said. "No, you can't. That's my private storage." "Ma'am, the order authorizes entry. We can force it, or you can open it." Eliza, defeated, her baby shield rendered useless, slumped. She walked over and unlocked the door. The officers stepped inside. Vincent and I followed. The blast of hot air hit us first, the sound of dozens of computer fans. The whole garage was a server farm, a tangled mess of power cords plugged into overloaded strips, all running off my electrical panel. "Well," Riley said, "there's the power bill." His partner was already moving through the stacks. "Got more cereals. They all match the list." Riley, however, was in the main house, his partner covering the garage. The order allowed a sweep to secure all assets. "Just checking for any other company property, ma'am," he said to Eliza, who was now just standing silent in the foyer, holding Maya. He opened the hall closet, a cascade of small shoes, jackets, and toys. But behind a pile of beach towels, a men's black backpack was shoved in the corner. "Whose is this?" Riley asked. It's my friend's," Eliza whispered. "Your boyfriend's?" Eliza didn't answer. Riley opened the main compartment, junk, mail, a pair of sunglasses, and a small blue plastic card. He pulled it out. It was a Hartmere Capital Pass. "This a friend of yours from work, Ms. Blake?" he asked. I looked at it. It wasn't Doran's. It was a generic guest pass. Guest, 41st FLR. It access. "Officer," I said, my voice steady. "That card, serial number G41882, was reported lost from our reception desk 2 weeks ago. It has full IT contractor privileges." Riley looked at Eliza. "This is no longer a civil matter, ma'am." "Stop filming me!" Eliza suddenly screamed, pointing at the realtor, who was still on the sidewalk, phone up, capturing the entire scene. "I'll sue you. This is private." Officer Riley walked calmly out onto the lawn. He motioned to Sarah, who nervously lowered her phone. "Ma'am," Riley said. "I'm Officer Riley. Were you on the public sidewalk the entire time you were recording?" "Yes, officer," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "I was just filming an intro for my listing." Riley nodded, then turned to me, lowering his voice. "Don't you worry about her. Her video is legal open source. She's on public property, filming what's in plain view. She's the best witness we have." He turned back to Eliza. Vincent stepped forward and handed her the final, folded copy of the court order. I didn't speak. I just watched. Eliza's eyes, wide with panic, scanned the dense legal text. She wasn't reading the clauses. She was looking at the top of the page. "In the Superior Court of Westvale, Rowan Blake, plaintiff, versus Eliza Calder, defendant, her name, opposite mine, on a legal document." The reality of it hit her like a physical blow. The performance stopped. The anger evaporated. All that was left was the blank, hollow-eyed realization of an amateur who had just lost a game she didn't even know she was playing. Mark Doran never showed up. He never called the driver back. He was, at that moment, being escorted from his desk by Hartmere security. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a new text, from a number I didn't recognize. "We need to talk privately, not like this." It was him. He had found a way to send one last, pathetic message. I took a screenshot. I saved the image as SD Exhibit Y in the case file. I didn't reply. Ms. Petrova gently guided Eliza, who was now silent, toward her car. "Let's go get the boys." "Eliza, let's go to the hotel." The police were taping off my garage. The Axiom driver was gone. The realtor, after promising to email me the raw video file, sped away. I was left standing alone, in front of my house. The sting was over. That same afternoon, at 4 p.m., I was on the 50th floor, the executive boardroom. The air here wasn't just filtered. It was pressurized. The room was a glass box overlooking the city. But today the shades were drawn, creating a sterile, artificial twilight. At the long, polished obsidian table sat the 5 members of the Hartmere Audit Committee. Robert Chenoweth, the chairman, a man who looked carved from old hickory. Maria Gonzalez, our general counsel, who read SEC filings for pleasure. 2 outside directors who were titans of other industries, and Greg Salter, the chief internal auditor, who was still flush from his morning's work. This was not a trial. It was an execution, and I was the one holding the axe. "Thank you for convening on such short notice," I began. My voice was amplified slightly by the room's microphones, sounding disembodied and cool. At 7:00 a.m. this morning, I presented an initial findings report, case file Silver Dunes, to Mr. Salter and Ms. Gonzalez. The events of the last 8 hours have accelerated the timeline. Mr. Salter? Greg nodded, his face grim. As of 9:15 a.m., my team conducted a full, unannounced audit of the procurement department, specifically targeting vendor Axiom Supply. We found significant irregularities. At 9:30 a.m., the target of the audit, Mr. Mark Doran, was found to be in communication with an external party, instructing them to violate a civil court order. Simultaneously, I cut in, taking the floor. I was on site at the property in question, 44 Silver Dunes Drive, accompanied by local law enforcement to serve that order. We successfully secured the assets. I clicked the first button on my remote. The massive 8K screen at the end of the room lit up. The slide was simple. It was a sun-drenched, wide-angle shot of my bungalow, the realtor's photo. But I had photoshopped a title over it in stark, white, sans-serif font. It read, "Evidence doesn't lie." "This is 44 Silver Dunes Drive," I said. "It is a private residence. It is also, as of this morning, a crime scene. For the last 4 months, it has been operating as an unauthorized, off-books warehouse and active server farm for Hartmere Capital assets, paid for by Hartmere Capital, and facilitated by a Hartmere Capital employee." I clicked again. The screen split into 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1. Invoice 889 T 150,000. Quadrant 2. The shipping manifest for 1140 Dune Parkway, Silver Dunes Storage. Quadrant 3. The screenshot of the box from my garage camera. Timestamped 2:17 a.m. Quadrant 4. The warranty file from Hartmere's system, with the serial number highlighted in yellow, matching the number on the box. Here is the workflow of the fraud, I said, my voice as flat and dry as an auditor's report. 1. Mr. Doran, Deputy Procurement Manager, approves a fraudulent invoice from Axiom Supply for hardware to be delivered to a ghost project site, which is just a P.O. box at a storage facility. 2. Axiom, in collusion with Doran, bills Hartmere for the assets, which our company pays in full. They simultaneously file for a state tax credit on the same assets, claiming they are obsolete inventory, thus double-dipping. 3. Axiom then delivers the paid-for hardware, not to the storage facility, but in the dead of night to this private residence. We have video, Exhibit C, showing the receipt of goods. 4. The serial numbers on the boxes in the video, confirmed on-site today, are an exact match for the serial numbers Hartmere paid for and that Axiom claimed as a tax loss. This is not just theft, it is wire fraud, mail fraud, and tax evasion. I clicked to the next slide. It was the screenshot of the Venmo transaction. Axiom Logistics LLC paid Eliza Calder SIP $5,000. 5. The conspiracy is active and sloppy. This transaction, from an Axiom shell company to the civilian accomplice, was made publicly on Friday night. It is, for all intents and purposes, a receipt for her silence. I clicked again. The slide showed the stolen blue guest pass found in the hall closet. 6. The accomplice was also in possession of a lost corporate guest pass with IT-level privileges, reported missing 2 weeks ago. This pass was used 3 times, on weekends, to access the 41st floor. I let that hang in the air. This was no longer just procurement fraud. This was a physical security breach. Robert Chenoweth, the chairman, finally spoke. His voice was a low rumble. Ms. Blake, you've presented a remarkably complete case in a very short time, but you've referred to the civilian accomplice multiple times. Who is this individual? The one who lives at the property and received the goods? This was the moment. The air in the room didn't change, but I could feel the molecular density shift. They were leaning in. I clicked to the final slide. It was my driver's license photo next to Eliza's. Side by side, our last names, Blake and Calder, clearly visible. The genetic similarity was unmistakable. The slide was titled, Full Disclosure, Conflict of Interest. The civilian accomplice, I said, meeting Chenoweth's gaze, the unauthorized tenant of my property and the recipient of the stolen goods, is Eliza Calder. She is my sister. Not a single person at the table reacted. No one gasped. No one whispered. They were professionals. They just stared, processing the new, critical variable. Maria Gonzalez, the general counsel, was the first to speak. Her face was impassive. Ms. Blake, your investigation appears to be thorough. You used personal assets, your home, as the locus of the sting operation. That is incorrect, I stated. My home was not an asset. It was a liability. It was the point of failure, the initial vector of the fraud. I did not use my home. I was forced to secure it, both as a property owner and as a corporate officer. When I discovered it was being used in a criminal conspiracy against this company, the 2 roles were, unfortunately, inseparable. I turned to the committee at large. Which brings me to my primary recommendation. I have, to this point, acted as the lead investigator. I have gathered the evidence, identified the parties, and neutralized the immediate threat. However, due to the direct familial conflict, I must formally request to be recused from any and all further decisions regarding disciplinary action, termination, or criminal referrals related to this case. I placed my remote on the table. My job was to find the leak and stop it. I now hand the matter over to the committee, to General Counsel, and to Mr. Salter. It was a necessary move. By offering to recuse myself, I was proving my objectivity. I wasn't a sister seeking revenge. I was a compliance officer handing over a clean file. Chenoweth looked at Maria Gonzalez. Maria gave a single, sharp nod. "The recusal is appropriate and noted," Chenoweth said. He turned to Greg Salter. "Mr. Salter, what is Doran's status?" "Suspended, pending termination," Greg said, reading from a tablet. His credentials were frozen at 9:01 a.m. His desk and all devices were seized. He was escorted from the building by security at 9:45 a.m., following his incriminating phone call. "Good," Chenoweth said. He turned back to me. "Axiom Supply." "I recommend," I said, stepping back into my role. "Immediate and permanent blacklisting. We sever all contracts. We add Axiom and all known subsidiaries, including Axiom Logistics LLC, to the global vendor exclusion list, and we flag them to our industry partners, and we refer their tax filings to the IRS and their invoices to the district attorney's office." "Agreed," Chenoweth said. "Maria, make it so." "Already done, Robert," Maria said, not looking up from her screen. "The termination for cause letters are drafted. The referral packet for the DA is being messengered now." There was a new voice. It was Cynthia Wu, from the communications department, who had been sitting silently in the corner. "Robert, if I may, this is an incredible case study, a vendor conspiracy, a procurement breach, a ghost project. But it was caught. It was caught by our own internal controls, by the head of compliance, no less. She was spinning it. It was her job. I'd like to propose," Cynthia continued, "that we use this as a mandatory ethics training module. We can anonymize the names, of course, but the workflow, the red flags, the discovery, it's the perfect see something, say something success story. It shows our systems work." The committee members nodded. It was a good angle. It turned a massive liability into a public relations win. "Ms. Blake?" Chenoweth asked. "Are you comfortable with that?" I thought for a moment. Anonymized. A dry, boring case study that would be forgotten in a week. No, that was not the correct outcome. The lesson was not in the abstract. It was in the specific. "I am Mr. Chairman. On 2 conditions," I said. Cynthia Wu's smile tightened. "First, we do not anonymize the adults. We use the real, legal names of Mark Doran and Eliza Calder. We use the real name of the vendor, Axiom Supply. Accountability is not abstract. The training module should reflect the real world, named consequences of criminal action." There was a heavy silence. This was unprecedented. "And the second condition?" Maria Gonzalez asked, her pen poised. "The video footage and photographs contain images of Ms. Calder's 3 minor children. Their faces, and any other identifying information related to them, are to be redacted, pixelated, blurred, and black-barred. They are non-combatants in this. They are to be protected, the adults. However, their names must be public record within the company." Chenoweth stared at me for a long time. He was calculating the risk, the legal exposure. "Maria?" he asked. "It's aggressive," Maria said. "But it's defensible. They are not employees. The facts are matters of a police record. As long as we stick to the documented facts of the case file, it's not defamation, it's reporting." "Then I agree," Chenoweth said. "So it shall be. Excellent work. Rowan." The meeting was ending. People were closing their binders, but one of the outside directors, a quiet man named Thomas, raised his hand. "Ms. Blake, one last question." I turned. "The house," he said. "This all happened because they used your personal asset. What happens to the house now? And for that matter, to your sister?" The room went quiet again. They had handled the corporate. This was the human. They were curious. They were testing me. I looked from Thomas to Maria to Chenoweth. I gave them the only answer I had. Mr. Davies, with the evidence secured by police, the house has been returned to my possession. As the owner, I said, my voice cold and precise, I will be following all legal protocols. That includes a full forensic cleaning, a change of all locks, and filing a civil suit against Ms. Calder and Mr. Doran for damages, including the $2,500 electrical bill they ran up. I paused, letting the legal answer settle. But, I continued, my voice softening just 1 degree, you also asked about my sister. As a sister, I will be following my conscience. I picked up my remote. And my conscience dictates that the 2-week hotel voucher, the $2,000 grocery card, and the referral to the Westvale Family Services for job placement are the last dollars my sister will ever see from me. My conscience is now as clear as my compliance report. I nodded to the board. If that's all, gentlemen, I have a civil suit to file. I walked out of the glass box, my heels clicking on the marble, leaving them to divide the spoils. It was a Thursday, a week after the sting, a week since Doran had been terminated and escorted, red-faced and sputtering, from the Hartmere lobby, a week since Eliza and her children had been installed in the gray anonymous Residence Inn, under the watchful, non-judgmental eye of Julia Petrova, the advocate from Westvale Family Services. The police had taken the hardware, the DA's office had taken the file. Axiom Supply was now a blacklisted vendor, and its principals were under federal investigation. The machine was working. But there was one piece of unsecured liability left: my family. I had arranged the meeting, not at my home and not at my office. It was held in a beige, windowless mediation room at a neutral law firm, one that specialized in high-conflict family resolutions. The room smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and stale coffee. I was there first, then my lawyer, Mr. Vinson, arrived, wheeling a small, heavy-looking briefcase. Julia Petrova, the advocate, came next, her presence a calming, professional balm. Then they arrived, my mother, Catherine, and Eliza. My mother's eyes were red and puffy, her face a mask of tragedy and accusation. She looked at me as if I were a stranger who had just kicked her dog. Eliza was a different person. The fiery, manipulative, performative victim was gone. In her place was a sullen, pale woman in leggings and a wrinkled t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a stringy ponytail. She looked deflated, defeated. "Thank you all for coming," Vincent began, his voice smooth and devoid of passion. He was the perfect instrument for this. "We are here today to find a path forward for Ms. Calder and her children, and to resolve the outstanding civil liabilities related to 44 Silver Dunes Drive." Ms. Petrova nodded. "My only role here is to advocate for the stability of the children. Leo, Mason, and Maya. They are safe, but they are anxious. They need a permanent, stable solution." My mother immediately started to cry, a soft, gulping, performative sob. "Stability? You took their home," she whispered, glaring at me. Eliza, however, found her voice. It was cracked, but the old indignation was still there. "You can't just take it. I have rights." "Ms. Calder," Vincent said, opening his briefcase, "let's be very clear about the facts, shall we?" He placed his hands on the table. "You are claiming a right to the property. What is the basis of that claim?" It's a family house," Eliza stammered, looking to my mother for support. "Rowan, she's family. That house, it's ours. It's my family share. I put work into that house. I made it a home. That's sweat equity." Sweat equity. The arrogance was so pure it was almost impressive. The sweat of running a server farm on my dime. The equity of receiving stolen goods in my garage. I didn't speak. I just watched Vincent. He smiled. A thin reptilian smile. "Sweat equity, I see." From his briefcase, he pulled the first item, a small ring of keys. He slid them across the table. They stopped in front of Eliza. "These are the keys from the third locksmith, Ms. Calder." The ones I had made after the police unsealed the property. The first locksmith was the one you hired, illegally. The second was the one Ms. Blake hired, to regain access. This third set. This set cost $480 to rekey every lock you and your partner compromised. Let's call this Exhibit A. He reached back in. You mention a family share. Here. He slid a thick, bound document across the table. Is the Articles of Incorporation for the RB Coastal Sanctuary Trust, a legal entity of which my client, Rowan Blake, is the sole trustee and beneficiary. There is no family share. There is no ours. The house is an asset of a trust, which you infiltrated. He pulled out a third item, a stack of papers. And finally, your claim of sweat equity. This is the accounting of your work. He tapped the first page. The final utility bill from Silver Dunes Electric, total due, $2,541.19, for power consumed by the illegal server farm in the garage, paid in full by my client. He tapped the next. The bill for the data forensics team to wipe the hard drives and secure the network you and Mr. Doran established, $4,200. Paid. He tapped the last. The bill for the hazmat cleaners required to remove the spoiled food, garbage, and bio-waste left in the home after your abrupt departure, $1,800. Also paid. He folded his hands. Your sweat equity, Ms. Calder, amounts to a total civil liability of $9,021.19. And that, he added, is before my client files for punitive damages for defamation, trespass, and conspiracy. Eliza stared at the bills. She had no response. The numbers were concrete. They were not feelings. They were not negotiable. My mother, however, was in her element. Money, money, money. Is that all you see? Rowan? Is that all you are? This isn't about bills. This is about a mother and her children, your own sister. That's precisely why we're here, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was calm. We are here to address my sister, the mother. I looked at Eliza. The 2-week hotel voucher expires on Wednesday. You have no job. You are currently a person of interest in a federal fraud investigation. You have no assets and 3 dependents. You are correct. Mother, this is not about money. This is about the total, catastrophic failure of Eliza's life. Rowan, my mother gasped. I'm trying, Eliza cried, her voice rising. It's not my fault. It was Mark. He said it was fine. He said, I don't care what he said. I cut her off. I am going to offer you a solution, not a negotiation, a one-time final offer. You can take it, or you can leave it, Ms. Petrova. I nodded to the advocate. I believe you will find this is more than generous. I leaned forward. I will pay, in full, the first and last month's rent and security deposit on a 2-bedroom apartment in the Westvale district, to be chosen by Ms. Petrova. I will pay the rental subsidy for 6 consecutive months. After 6 months, you are on your own. Ms. Petrova's organization has also agreed to provide you with 3 months of mandatory job counseling and placement services, also paid for by me. This offer is for the stability of Leo, Mason, and Maya. It is not for you. Eliza looked up, a flicker of the old entitled hope in her eyes. You'll pay my rent? On 3 conditions, I said, and these are not negotiable. Vincent slid a new, single-page document to the center of the table. 1, I said, you will sign a confession of judgment for the full amount of the damages, $9,021.98. It will include a court-mandated repayment plan. To begin the moment you are employed, you will pay back every cent. 2, I continued, you will sign a legally binding agreement, enforceable by the court, to have no further contact, financial, personal, or digital, with Mark Doran. Any communication with him voids this entire offer, and my lawyer will move to garnish your wages immediately. And 3, I said, you will sign a formal, the public letter of apology. It will be addressed to the board of Hartmere Capital. It will state that you knowingly and willfully stored stolen property on my premises. It will state that you deliberately and falsely defamed me and my company. It will be entered into the Silver Dunes case file as a formal confession. You will take responsibility." My mother stood up so fast her chair squeaked back. "A confession? A public apology? Rowan, you are inhuman. You are a monster. This is your sister. You've taken her home. You've gotten her boyfriend fired. You're sending her to prison. And now you want to humiliate her? You are a cold, unfeeling, heartless bitch." The words hung in the sterile air. Ms. Petrova's face didn't move. Vincent just checked his watch. I looked at my mother, the woman who had spent 30 years protecting the kind heart and reprimanding the principled one. "Mother," I said, my voice quiet, "I am not cold. I am clear. I am not unfeeling. I am disciplined. You taught me that feelings are what matter. Eliza is what happens when you live a life based only on feelings. She felt she deserved my house. She felt she deserved my money. She felt she was a victim. Her feelings are what led her to become a criminal." I stood up and leaned on the table, my voice dropping. "You want me to be feeling? Fine. I feel that my company was defrauded. I feel that my home was violated. I feel that my name was slandered, and my feelings are now being processed by the American legal system. My feelings have consequences. You are right. I am not emotional. Emotions don't replace responsibility, and Eliza's responsibilities are on this table." You're just jealous," Eliza suddenly choked out. I stopped. I turned to her. She was weeping. Her face twisted in a way I'd never seen. It wasn't a performance. It was real. "You're jealous," she repeated, her voice a raw whisper. "You've always been jealous of me, because I have them. I have my kids. I'm a mother. I have love. All you have is your money, and your title, and you're cold, empty. Principles. You'll never know what it's like to be loved like that. You just want to destroy me because you're jealous I'm a mom." It was her final, pathetic, nuclear option. The one argument she truly believed was unassailable, that her biological function gave her a moral superiority that I, the barren, successful one, could never touch. I almost laughed. The sound that came out was a dry, cold sigh. "Jealous," I repeated. I walked over to Vincent's briefcase. I pulled out 2 last documents. I walked back and I didn't just slide them. I dropped them in front of her. "You want to talk about love, Eliza?" The first document was the official, internal Hartmere memo. Subject: Permanent vendor exclusion. Axiom supply. The second was the intake summary from the district attorney's office. Case: Hartmere Capital versus Doran, M. and Calder, E. "This," I said, tapping the Axiom memo, "is the love your boyfriend's career got him. He's unemployable in this industry. His name is on a blacklist I wrote myself." I tapped the second paper, the DA's summary. "And this is the love of the law. This is the document that will follow you for the rest of your life. This is the state protecting society from people like you. This is the cold, hard principle that says your motherhood is not a shield. It is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. It is not an excuse to steal and lie and defraud." I leaned in, my voice dropping so low only she, my mother, and Ms. Petrova could hear me. "You want to talk about love? My love for my name, my love for my company, and my love for the law is the only reason you are sitting in this room, being offered a 6-month apartment and not sitting in a holding cell. This is the only love you have left." I stood up straight. Eliza looked down at the papers. She read her name. She read Calder, E, next to Doran, M. She read the words conspiracy, wire fraud, and theft. All the air went out of her, the tears, the anger, the jealousy. It all vanished. She was hollow. For the first time in her entire, chaotic, emotional life, Eliza Calder was completely and utterly silent. Ms. Petrova waited a beat. Then, She calmly picked up a ballpoint pen from the center of the table and slid it across the polished wood. It stopped, perfectly, right next to Eliza's hand. It was a month later. The legal machinery, once started, ground forward with inevitable, crushing force. The Silver Dunes file was closed, but the repercussions were not. The case had become a legend within Hartmere, a dark fable whispered in virtual chat rooms. Cynthia Wu, from Communications, had seized on it. Today was the Quarterly Integrity Summit. It was a mandatory, all-hands, global webinar, broadcast from a sterile studio on the 50th floor. 5,000 employees, from Singapore to London, were logged in, their webcams off, their microphones muted, a silent, captive audience. I was at the main podium. I was not a sister. I was not a victim. I was the keynote speaker. "Good morning," I said, my voice resonating, clear and cold, in the headsets of 5,000 people. In compliance, we often talk about abstract threats, market manipulation, data breaches, conflicts of interest. Today, we are going to talk about a concrete one. We're going to talk about what happens when the rot is internal, when the threat isn't just a vendor, but one of our own. Cynthia Wu's voiceover kicked in, smooth and professional. To give us context on the civil and criminal liability of asset misappropriation, we are pleased to welcome a guest speaker from the Silver Dunes Police Department, Officer James Riley, who was the lead investigator on a recent and significant corporate recovery case. The main feed switched from me to Officer Riley. He was in his dress uniform, sitting in an office, the American flag behind him. He was a good guest, stoic, professional, and slightly intimidating. "Thank you, Ms. Wu, Ms. Blake," he said, reading his prepared statement. "Often, corporate theft is seen as a white-collar or victimless crime. I can assure you, it is not. When an employee diverts physical assets, as happened in the Silver Dunes case, they create a multi-layered criminal enterprise. They involve external parties. They commit wire fraud. They create a physical security risk." He spoke for 10 minutes. He never used Doran's name. He never used Eliza's. He just spoke of the employee and the civilian accomplice. He detailed how they had responded to a request to preserve assets from a corporate officer, how they had uncovered an active server farm, and how the assets, valued in the hundreds of thousands, were secured and returned to the company. This was a textbook example, he concluded, of a corporate civil partnership. The company's internal controls identified the threat, and law enforcement was able to act on that intelligence. We are grateful for the professionalism of Hartmere's compliance department. The feed switched back to me. "Thank you, Officer Riley," I said. "Professionalism is, indeed, the subject of this presentation." Cynthia's voice returned. "Rowan, you were the officer who led this investigation. Can you walk us through the discovery and the resolution of the Silver Dunes case?" This was the moment. I was not bound by the officer's neutrality. I had been given clearance from the board. "I can," I said. I clicked the remote. The screen behind me lit up with the split-screen image. Invoice 889T on one side. The grainy night vision video of boxes being unloaded into my garage on the other. The subject was a trusted, mid-level manager in procurement, Mark Doran. The vendor was a longtime partner, Axiom Supply. The scheme was simple. File fraudulent invoices, ship assets to an off-site location, and sell them on the gray market. The off-site location, in this case, was the private residence of the accomplice. I didn't need to say, "my house." The case file was already legend. But this case had a second, more insidious layer. When the investigation began, the accomplice, Ms. Eliza Calder, initiated a public smear campaign. I clicked. The screen now showed the screenshot of Eliza's tearful, deleted Instagram video. The accomplice used social media to falsely claim she was a victim. She accused the company, and me as its representative, of harassment, of manufacturing a case against her, and of corporate malfeasance. She attempted to use her status as a mother to shield her from accountability. This is a tactic, It is designed to weaponize public opinion and intimidate investigators. I let the image of her crying face linger for a beat. It did not work. I clicked again. As part of the civil settlement, and in exchange for a recommendation of leniency from the district attorney's office, Ms. Calder agreed to sign a full confession and issue a public apology, not just to the board, but to the entire company she defamed. A new image filled the screen. It was a sterile corporate email from E. Calder at guest, Hartmere, to all company global distribution, subject, a formal apology and retraction regarding case file Silver Dunes. Cynthia Wu had arranged the guest account. I had dictated the text. Eliza had hit send from the computer at the Westvale Library 1 hour ago, fulfilling the final, most humiliating condition of her surrender. I read the key lines aloud. My name is Eliza Calder. I am writing to formally apologize for the false and defamatory statements I made against Hartmere Capital and its compliance department. My claims of being a victim were untrue. My voice was steady, magnified to 5,000 listeners. I confirmed that I lived at 44 Silver Dunes Drive without legal authorization. I knowingly and willfully allowed my partner, Mark Doran, to store stolen corporate property in that residence. Property I knew belonged to Hartmere Capital. I allowed this property into a place I had no right to be, and I lied to conceal that fact. I take full and necessary legal responsibility for my actions. I paused. The feed was silent. Ms. Wu, the final slide. Click, the screen split. On the left, Eliza's email. On the right, the high-resolution police photo of the hardware stacked to the ceiling. A bright yellow evidence tag on the top box, her confession, side by side with her crime. The public record was now complete, indisputable. I turned back to the camera. The red live light was a small, unblinking eye. The lesson of this case is simple, I said. The accomplice, Ms. Calder, is the sister of a Hartmere executive. That executive was me. A low murmur, which the microphones did not pick up, went through the live studio crew. The subject, Mr. Doran, believed that this familial relationship created a blind spot, a shield. He believed that family would supersede policy. He was wrong. The system worked. The audit was clean. The investigation was not, and will never be, compromised. I leaned forward slightly, my eyes locking on the lens. Hartmere's principles of integrity are absolute. My job, and your job, is to uphold them. No matter who is on the other side, family does not exempt professional ethics. I held the look for 3 seconds. Thank you. The red light went off. My presentation was over. I stepped away from the podium as Cynthia Wu began the closing remarks. The feed switched to Robert Chenoweth, the chairman, who appeared from his own office. Thank you, Ms. Blake, he boomed, for that powerful and necessary demonstration of accountability. As of this morning, Hartmere Capital has permanently terminated its global contract with Axiom Supply. The full, unredacted Silver Dunes case file has been turned over to the district attorney's office. This company will pursue every available legal avenue. This summit is adjourned. The feed cut. The webinar was over. I unclipped my microphone and handed it to a technician. I didn't stay for the executive backslapping. I took the elevator straight down to the lobby. My phone buzzed. It was Greg Salter. They're here for him. I walked out of the elevator bank. The lobby was vast, marble, and quiet. Across the atrium, near the main security desk, stood Mark Doran. He was not in cuffs. He was arguing. He was trying to get in the building. I have a meeting with HR, he was yelling at the security chief. Sir, your access is revoked. You are not an employee. You can't. Mr. Doran? 2 men in dark, ill-fitting suits stepped up behind him. Detectives. Are you Mark Doran? Who's asking? The detective held up a badge. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud and grand larceny. I watched, from 50 yards away, as they turned him, put his hands behind his back, and I heard the sharp, definitive click-click of the handcuffs. It was quiet, It was professional. It was clean. He was gone. A ghost being exorcised from the building. My work here was finished. I pushed through the revolving glass doors and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The air was cold. The sky a deep, bruised purple of early evening. And I saw her. She was standing across the street, just as I knew she would be. Eliza. She was not the tearful victim from the video. She was not the sullen, hollow woman from the lawyer's office. She was just a person, small, tired, and defeated. She was not alone. She was holding Leo's hand and Mason's hand. The baby, Maya, was strapped into an old stroller. They were just standing there, in the cold, watching the Hartmere building, waiting. Her children, my nephews, looked up at the glass tower with blank, patient faces. She had no phone in her hand, no camera, no audience. The performance was over. She saw me. Her body flinched. A small, involuntary movement of fear. I did not wave. I did not smile. I paused, buttoned my coat, and crossed the street. The traffic slowed for me. I stopped 5 feet in front of her. The boys shrank back. "Rowan," she whispered. It was the first time she had used my name in what felt like a lifetime. I said nothing. I reached into the deep pocket of my wool coat. I pulled out a single, white plastic key card. I held it out. She looked at the card, then at my face, then back at the card. She knew what it was. The key to the 6-month apartment. The key to her survival. The key I had promised. Her hand, raw and red from the cold, slowly reached out and took it. Her fingers grazed mine. They were freezing. I looked at her, then at the children. My blood. I gave her the key. "For the kids," I said. I turned, crossed the street, and got into the back of a waiting cab. I did not look back. The reckoning was done. The ledger was, finally, balanced. It was late afternoon at Silver Dunes. The light was golden, sharp, and unforgiving. A locksmith, a new one, a meticulous craftsman, was humming as he worked. He was not drilling. He was replacing. He finished tightening the faceplate on the front door and stood back. He was removing the locks my lawyer had installed, the ones that had replaced Eliza's. He was restoring the original, builder-specified, high-security hardware from the day I first bought the house. "There we go, Ms. Blake," he said, wiping his hands. He passed me a small, heavy ring of keys. The original keys. "Back to factory specs. Good as new." "Better than new," I said. Inside, the house was empty. The smell of industrial-grade lemon oil and bleach had finally, permanently, erased the scent of sour milk and simmering tomatoes. It was sterile. Sarah, the realtor, was finishing. She took one last, wide-angle shot of the living room. The room was vacant, a perfect, neutral box of potential. The low golden hour sun streamed in, stretching long, hard rectangles across the gleaming hardwood floor. It was beautiful, an asset. "It's perfect. Rowan," she said, lowering her phone. "The energy in here is 1,000 times better, clean, contemporary, and ready for you. This will rent before the listing is even live." "Send me the photos," I said. "I'll approve them tonight." She nodded, packed her gimbal, and left. The locksmith's van pulled away. I was alone. I walked through the house one last time. My heels clicked, the sound sharp and solitary on the clean wood. No thudding of small feet, no echoes of a life I didn't build. I went to the garage. The floor was scrubbed clean, but you could still see the faint outlines in the concrete where the server racks had been, like crop circles, an industrial scar. I went back to the front door. I took a single sticky note from my briefcase. I uncapped my pen and wrote 4 words on it. "This house belongs to responsibility." I stuck it to the inside of the door, just above the new, gleaming deadbolt. It was not a message for the new tenants. It was a receipt, a final closing entry for the ledger. As I stepped onto the porch, my phone vibrated in my coat pocket. I pulled it out. A new email. Subject: Lease execution confirmation. 14B, Willow Creek. It was from the property management company. The 6-month prepaid lease for Eliza and the children was signed, countersigned, and finalized. The funds had been transferred. The key I had given her was now active. My last act as sister was complete. I stepped outside and pulled the heavy door shut. The new lock engaged with a solid, definitive thunk. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the storm door. My face was clear. My hair was pulled back. My coat was buttoned. My hands were perfectly, absolutely steady. I walked to my car and got in. The engine started with a low, clean hum. I sat for a moment. I pulled out my work phone. I opened the encrypted note-taking app. There it was. The last file. Case file. Conflict check. Calder. I opened it. The timeline of texts. The photo of the whiteboard. The screenshots of the Venmo transaction and Doran's headlight intimidation. A perfect, precise record of my rage. I held my thumb over the delete icon. A prompt appeared. Are you sure you want to permanently delete this file? I pressed delete. The file vanished. The folder was empty. The case was closed. I put the car in gear and pulled away from the curb. I did not look back. My personal phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A new text message. It was from Robert, the chairman of the audit committee. Rowan. The board extends its formal gratitude for your exceptional integrity and handling of the Silver Dunes matter. A significant bonus has been approved for your Q4 payout. Thank you. I picked up the phone. I opened the message. I typed nothing. I selected the thumbs up emoji. I hit send. I tossed the phone back on the seat. I drove. I hit the coastal highway, accelerating, merging into the sparse traffic. The sun was a dying red ember on the horizon. In my rearview mirror, the sign passed, then vanished. Now. Leaving Silver Dunes, my home was in Grayford. I had work to do tomorrow. My turn signal clicked, a steady, rhythmic sound. Click, click, click. I merged, turning north, away from the ocean, toward the city. The silence in the car was total. I turned on the radio, static, then a jingle, a bright, obnoxious, cheerful jingle. Stuck in a jam? Need a new logistics partner? Call A1 Transport. We're new, we're local, and we fill the gap. For all your shipping needs, call a new company, already, rising from the ashes of Axiom, scrambling to fill the void, a new predator for the same ecosystem. I smiled, a small, cold, genuine smile. It had absolutely nothing to do with me. I didn't care. I changed the station. Classical music swelled, filling the car as it accelerated into the dark. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from today. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts on Rowan's final move. Let's chat about it. If you enjoyed this, please don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and give us your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.